Let's go ahead and bring in our special guest. You've seen him here before. His name is Jose Vega. He is running against Ritchie Torres. Let's go ahead and bring Jose in. What's going on, Jose?
How are you doing, Sabrina?
I am doing good. Welcome back. Welcome back. I can honestly say you are one of the few candidates that I've actually hung out with in person.
That's right. That's right. We had a good time at Icarus Fest. I'm really glad we were there. We met up. We spoke. It was me, you, Katie Halpert, Blumenthal, Max Blumenthal. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but I remember we got to start from the beginning because for those who are not familiar, Jose, if you first kind of came onto the scene when you were confronting journalists and other politicians about pro-war propaganda, of course, especially those that are pro-Israel. You also have been very critical about Ritchie Torres and what he has not done for the Bronx community. So I want to start with the Bronx. Why did you decide to run against Ritchie Torres? And would you say he is actually helping people in his district?
Yeah. Thanks for letting me come here and talk about the Bronx. So, as you know, the Bronx is the poorest congressional district in the entire country. And, at first it's kind of hard to believe, but it's just true. It has the highest child poverty. It has, over 35% of people here live underneath the poverty line. And the poverty line in New York City is $34,000 a year. That's what New York City claims you need to make in order to have, to be at the poverty line or above it, right? And the median income of those people who are underneath that poverty line are $24,000 a year. That's where a lot of the residents of the Bronx are. So they are barely making ends meet. They're paying $1,000 or $1,500 sometimes for a studio apartment, sometimes for a 2-bedroom for $2,000, a 3-bedroom for $3,000. It's absolutely insane what's going on here in New York City. And on top of that, you have houses that are collapsing. So we had here a public housing project collapsed, 17 floors of a chimney that fell, and it got the water and the heating of these apartments were shut off and are still shut off. So that's falling apart. At the same time, you have luxury housing that's being built up. At the same time, you have casinos that are being built up, while you're also shutting down All Hallows Catholic High School, which is a school in the South Bronx, the poorest of the poor in the Bronx, that had a 100% graduation rate. And it's shut down now because they couldn't raise, they needed to raise $15 million. The community came together and raised $12 million. They were $3 million shy. And the Bronx Borough president and Ritchie Torres both visited the school and said, sorry, there's nothing we can do. I'm supposed to believe that Ritchie Torres can't call his donors and say, listen, this school needs another $3 million. Can you find me 10 people to match my, $250,000 donation or something? Regardless, so the Bronx is just it's collapsing. And it's part of a gentrification effort right now where they're shutting down the hospitals and the schools, and they're building up luxury housing, sometimes only blocks away from the public housing that's falling apart. And the congressman of this area, his solution is we need another $5 billion for Israel. We need another $5 billion so that Israel can defend itself against Hamas and the terrorism. That's what his solution is. He goes to Washington, D.C. He talks about Israel more than he does the Bronx. And so the people here have been left with no voice, nowhere, whether it's the state legislature or in Congress. The people here feel like they have no true representation, and they have been abandoned by somebody who's illegally occupying this seat. And so I decided I'm throwing my hat in the ring. And I ran against him last year, and I'm doing it again now.
So I'm glad that you mentioned the gentrification issue. This is something I've been talking about quite a bit. It's happening all over the country. My documentary is about the gentrification that's happening here in Boston. I think for people who have never been to the Bronx, I think you have to go there to see it for yourself. It's another story where you have older buildings, and all of a sudden, to Jose's point, those buildings need to be repaired. And right next to an older building that's fallen apart, you have like this luxury condo building. It's obvious what they're trying to accomplish there. I would also question if the new Yankee Stadium also could have contributed to some of that gentrification, because I know in other places when they do rebuild like some of these sports arenas, that also can cause like some of the gentrification as well. But to your point, I rarely have heard Ritchie Torres talk about the needs of the people in the Bronx. Like I've seen Ritchie Torres speak at different conferences for APAC, for Israel. I mean, everywhere, which way you turn, he's on someone's podcast talking about Israel, but I rarely hear this guy speak about the Bronx. And I want to get your opinion of the way that he was promoted. When Ritchie Torres first ran, I remember there was an article from the New Yorker, and they said that he was the perfect progressive because he checked off all the boxes. That's what they said about Ritchie Torres. They said he's a person of color. They said that he's LGBTQ. They said he grew up in a single parent household. So they said because of that, he checked off all the boxes. And yeah, he did have that experience. He did not grow up wealthy. He did grow up poor, but that doesn't mean he's going to serve that community. And as we've seen, as long as he's been in Congress, again, like I said, I don't really hear him talking about the Bronx. You have gone around and you have gone to different neighborhoods in the Bronx. I've seen the videos where you've talked to people. What has been the reception about Ritchie Torres from the people that you've spoken to on the ground?
It's interesting. It's a mixture of I don't know him to we need to get him out. Those are the two big ones. And then the people that kind of know him and are like, well, I like him because I see him on TV are the older folks, people who are 60 years old and plus, you know. In fact, actually yesterday in the Bronx, we were up in Norwood and we had a table set up and, you know, there was a woman who was coming by the street and one of my canvassers said, hi, would you like a change in the Bronx? She said, no, I don't want Jose Vega. I want Ritchie Torres because I have a nonprofit and he helps me with my nonprofit. And she just kept walking down the street, you know, and she was an elderly woman, you know, and she, you know, I guess she does run a nonprofit, you know, here. And, you know, and she was just like, I'm not going to hear anything bad about the guy who, you know, gave money to my nonprofit. You know, that's basically the big reception I get. There's a food pantry that I've been helping out a lot at in the Bronx, up in Little Albania. And it's, you know, it's quite interesting. They have pictures of them with Ritchie Torres when he was in the city council. And I asked them, like, listen, like, is the congressman of this area helping you out at all? Because they're at risk of being shut down. So they are 3 months behind on their rent. Their rent is $5,000 a month. They rely purely on donations and also from the city councilwoman who's helping them out. And they're behind on their electricity bill. And I said, like, hey, like, is the congressman helping you? And they basically said ever since he went into the Congress, he hasn't been much help at all. And, you know, so I've been doing their delivery. I did their delivery last Wednesday where I drove in the van and I picked up the food from the locations and I unloaded it and I brought it back. And, you know, you realize just how evil it is that a congressman will neglect the very basic needs of his constituency, especially a food pantry that feeds 2,000 families on a weekly basis and is not, and instead cares about another country. And like, I have been seeing, like, I was talking to this one woman who she's a nurse or something at a hospital and she was making $48,000 a year before taxes. And she was like, she was anxious. She was on edge. And I was just like talking to her about something relating to the Bronx and stuff. And she says, listen, look, you know, I get you're trying to get elected, but look, you know, I pay money for car insurance. I pay money for my daughter to have a private school education because I don't trust the public school system. And the government takes my taxpayer money. I live in public housing that's falling apart. And she had a sling on her arm because her arm was broken because like pieces of her ceiling had fell on her and she fell and she broke her arm. So she was suing NYCHA, the New York City Housing Authority, which is responsible for the public housing here in New York City. And she said, like, look, like, and our government is failing us. Okay. I just, you know, we just need more Democrats elected in the House and everything can be fixed. And I said, ma'am, your current congressman is a Democrat who does not care about you, who is giving money to another country where they can have free healthcare on your taxpayer dollar that you barely qualify for, and you still have to pay a premium for it. And they get free education on your taxpayer dollar that you are working hard for your daughter to have. And they're slaughtering children your daughter's age with your money because of this congressman. And she started to cry. And she walked away and like, I had somebody go chase her down and get her number so we can be in contact with her. Oh, that reminds me, I have to go see her tomorrow. And we have to, so we're in contact with her, because we want to just stay updated with her and like let her know like we're working on getting this guy out so she can feel like somebody has her back in the government. Yeah.
That's right. There's a question here, Jose, about the food pantry from Sassy. Sabby Sabs does his charity. I don't think it's his charity, but it's a food pantry here. Have a GoFundMe or a link where we can donate. Good question. How can people donate to that food pantry?
Thank you for asking. I'm going to send you a link right now can I send it to you via Twitter DMs and then you can get it here, or you know what? Here.
You can just put it in the private chat here too if you want.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Let me just do that quickly right here. Sorry. No. Let's do here. Copy link address. Yeah. So they do need the funds. Okay. And it's in the private chat. There you go. That should take you right. Yeah. There we go. Great. Okay. That's the link. I put it in the private chat and hopefully someone will put it in the comments. Yes, please. They are far behind. And also maybe I was a little too enthusiastic, but I did make a pledge that, so the congressional campaign is allowed to make a donation to 501c3s so long as it doesn't personally benefit me. And it's not gonna, but so I did pledge to give them $1,000. And at the time I thought I'll just raise that. But we are in the process of raising that funds too for them as well. On top of, also, by the way, they don't just need money. If you're in the Bronx or you're in the greater New York City area, they need people to help distribute the food. They need people to help be drivers. If you have a driver's license, you can reach out to them on that website and call the number and let them know, hey, I'm willing to drive, pick up food for you, that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
Okay. So that's, I just want to show people so they can see it. It's a Food Pantry Open Hand Association, Inc. That's the organization Jose is referring to that's in the Bronx. I put the link in the chat for you guys. So if you want to donate and help them out, that would be great, because I know people that depended on these food pantries. So like when these things close, that's not good for them. And contrary to what people believe, like SNAP doesn't cover everything. So there are people who do rely on those food pantries. So thank you so much for mentioning that, Jose.
Yeah, and please, like I hope like I know there's people that don't believe in voting and elections, and honestly, like this food pantry needs the help. I spoke with a woman on there. I have this video on my X account. I spoke with a woman on there. It was all done in Spanish. She had just had like open cranial surgery and she had a wound in her stomach and her doctor told her she should not be walking. Yet she goes there every Thursday and Saturday to get food for her and her family. She's an elderly woman. And what was so great about talking to her was the thing that was on her mind was the Gaza flotilla and the interception of the aid. And she had drawn the connection about how they're denying the aid to the people in Gaza. At the same time, they're shutting down pantries here. And she's like, she made that connection. I was like, that is exactly right.
Yeah, that's the connection between foreign policy and domestic policy. And speaking of that, Jose, one of the questions I have to ask, because people are going to want to know this, how will you avoid like being corrupted by AIPAC, right? Because we know that they seek out candidates pretty early on and trying to get them to join on to their lobby interests. What would you do if you were approached by AIPAC?
That's a great question. First of all, because I can say, I will tell them to go fuck themselves, right? And I can say, that they don't have anything I want. And also at this point, being associated with AIPAC is a toxic thing. I don't know what happens to somebody like Zoran Mamdani was talking about arresting Netanyahu. And then just last week, he said, well, we have to operate within the bounds of the law. And the United States is not a signatory to the ICC. So he was dodging the question again as to whether or not he would, arrest Netanyahu. And in my mind, I'm like, actually, what the fuck does happen to somebody when they get to the point where they're about to be at power, that they turn and they get corrupted and they get muzzled? Now, here's what I can say from my standpoint. I have a record and a history of standing up to the people in power. Whether it's Nancy Pelosi, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Hakeem Jeffries, Mike Pompeo, Joe Biden, Jamal Pullman. I mean, you name it. I am not here to make friends in the political establishment, and everything I said about them will continue to be true. And I don't apologize for a damn thing I've said, and will not apologize for a thing I said. Nancy Pelosi is still very much a sad old drunk, and Hakeem Jeffries is still an airhead, and AOC was still a liar and a hypocrite. And I say these things now, especially because, I mean, you probably know this, and your audience knows this as well. I've entered the primary. You know, it's no longer just an independent candidate. I am an independent candidate, and I'm also in the primary, because New York City allows you to do that, where you can run both in the primary. And if I win or lose, it doesn't matter. I can still be in the general election under whatever party line I decide, as long as I petition for it. And a lot of people have been asking me, how can we be sure that you're not going to cozy up to the local Democratic Party chapter? How can we be sure you're not going to, you know, become like a Zoran or an AOC, where you say one thing and then you become a puppet and a tool of another thing? But I have stood on my convictions for this long, and I have a public record, and I don't hide any of my associations with any group that I have been involved with, to the point that, like, I am the skunk in the picnic. We sent out press releases about the fact that I am now, you know, in the primary race against one of the most watched elections in the country for 2026, and they've yet to cover it. They're going to try to ignore me, and that's okay. I don't want an endorsement from Hakeem Jeffries. I'm not trying to unify the Democratic Party. I'm not trying to fix the establishment. I'm very much here to expose the fact that the Bronx, which Ritchie Torres is not the only problem with the Bronx. You have a Bronx borough president that is talking about building more luxury housing for economic development, who's talking about building casinos for economic development in conjunction with Eric Adams, you know, talking about this is good for the Bronx. It's all falling apart in a state, in a borough where the city council is Democratic, the state legislature is Democratic, the governor is Democratic. This party has utterly failed everybody, and I want them to hear me. As an independent, solely independent candidate, they can choose to ignore me. But they know as well as I do that this is one of the most watched races in the entire country, and will be for 2026. And not just in the entire country, in the entire world. And I need to make sure that they hear me loud and clear, that this party, both parties, but especially the Democratic Party and how it's failed the Bronx, is a complete and utter disgrace and a failure. And they are going to hear me say this, and I'm going to make sure that they are associated with the likes of Ritchie Torres, and that instead the Bronx has an alternative voice.
So let's talk about this for just a second, because in New York, they don't have what's called a jungle primary, where even if you're running as an independent, you'll be a part of the primary, right? So in order for you to be in the primary, you have to run as, you're an independent, but you're running in the Democratic primary. And is this so that you can get on the debate stage, or
Yes.
what is your strategy behind this?
Yes, it's so I can get on the debate stage. It's so that I have more microphones on me. There's a lot of attention being put right now as to who will be the person who primaries Ritchie Torres. And I am deciding to put myself in that spotlight so that I can then get the attention that we need from the media to expose the fact that, hey, this is very much a failure and an indictment of the entire party. Don't try to scapegoat this into one bad politician, i.e. Ritchie Torres. And so, yes, this will allow me to get on the debate stage, and they cannot ignore me. And this will allow me to be heard more by the constituents here, many of whom already assumed I was in the primaries. I mean, you know, you and I had this discussion way back when we were hanging out in August at Icarus Fest, where I was very conflicted about the idea of even running in the Democrat primary or not. And, you know, you're right. It's not a jungle primary, but you still are allowed to do both. So, for example, I have to petition to put my name in for the Democrat primary at the end of January and all of February, and then the primaries in June. But before the primary, I have to petition again in April to May to put my name in for the independent ballot line for November. New York City allows you to do both. And if that's the case, I'm going to do everything at my disposal, use every resource and every tool I have, because this is a very unique time. The people of the Bronx need some reprieve, and I want to get Ritchie Torres out as soon as possible. And the other thing is, this gives me 2 chances to win. I only need to win once. You know, Ritchie Torres needs to win twice. So we have 2 shots here, and we can get him out.
I think Ritchie Torres can be beaten. I really do. I have noticed a couple of things, Jose. I've noticed I saw him taking pictures with Bronx residents recently. Like, look at this person that I helped. And I'm like, yeah. So it seems like he may be a little bit concerned.
I've got him on the ropes. I know, I really do. I don't want to show my hand too much, but like, for example, I had an endorsement from Guy Christensen. He goes by your favorite guy on TikTok. And that was really good because I have had people from the local masjids start reaching out, asking me to come and speak there because it's like, hey, I didn't know who you were. This is so exciting. I can't support a politician that supports genocide. Will you come to my local masjid next Friday? I mean, it's absolutely great. Or when you had me, no, you didn't even have me on your show. When you just shouted me out at the end of August, because of that video I had made where I was going around telling people about Ritchie Torres and you had dropped the beat for me. I have to give a shout out to Millie. Millie watches your show. She loves your show. And it turns out that she also goes to a local boxing gym where we host community events. And she was telling me about how she was really happy that you had promoted me and that's what made her donate and want to be supportive. In fact, I texted her that I was going to be on because I know she's watching right now. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Millie. She's an ardent follower and fan of yours. But my point is that you are right. He is on the ropes. He is afraid. And I think only announcing in the primary is only going to make him more nervous. And I know they're going to probably throw another candidate in to protect him because they're going to try to accuse me of splitting the vote in the primary. Oftentimes when you have a multi-candidate race, more than two in a primary, the advantage usually goes to the incumbent, right? Because there's more name recognition and whatnot. But the truth is, let them try that. I'm sprinting now. It's, like there's the principle of like a marathon race, right? You're supposed to take it in strides. You go slow here, you sprint here, slow down here, right? Or in a relay race, you put your slowest. Now we're just full on. We really are campaigning like the election is tomorrow. And with that comes some things that we've taken ourselves a little more seriously. We have a bigger team now. I got a haircut. I've been losing the weight, and as a result, everybody on my team has been so supportive of each other that I can honestly say we have built a great machine. Every single person on my team is the reason why we are going to beat Ritchie Torres and cause a real change in the Bronx, because they're the ones that are working hard right now, and they're the ones that are supporting us as we continue in on this mission, and they're going to stand with me through thick and thin, and they're prepared to take all the slander because I know it's going to come hard. The mainstream media is not going to be friendly to me, and this is also an advice to all of you too. Do not be weary of any candidate running anywhere in the country that gets instantly positive reviews or positive endorsements from the mainstream media. If MSNBC, CNN, this one and that one are telling you this candidate is the guy to support, I would be extremely cautious of that. Which is why I've been very, very skeptical of some of the up and coming Tea Party Democrats. But that being said, I'm just focusing on what I got to do here in the Bronx. And that is continue to talk to the people. The thing that I have over Ritchie Torres is that he has to be in Washington, D.C. all the time. And I can continue to be in the streets when he can't. The team can continue to be in the streets. The people of the Bronx who already support me are already talking to their neighbors I'm already getting lots of people reaching out from the videos of social media saying that they're happy that I'm out there. Or, for example, like somebody took a picture with me and posted it on their Instagram story. It was like, I actually got to meet a politician. And, with that comes a responsibility of like, okay, but I actually have to continue to keep this going. And I think that's another way in which I can answer the question about how do I actually continue to stay honest, not take AIPAC money, which I would never do. I would never take AIPAC money. These people are bloodthirsty killers. Okay. I mean, I still think about the young woman who, this was like in the peak of the genocide where this young girl was missing like half of her face and she was just running around and she didn't know what to do. And, like the entrails of her face were bleeding out of her, and AIPAC was there defending and endorsing this. And so was Ritchie Torres. I would never take a dime from these bloodthirsty people.
Jose, quick question here, and I think this is a good one for domestic. Thank you, Roger, for the super chat. What's the short and long-term domestic policy solution for all that ails the Bronx, New York, and U.S.?
Okay, good. Thank you. Roger was kicking my ass last year on policy. I'm glad to say we've redone our website and we have a ton more policy than we did before, and more is coming too. You know, Sabby, like, you were one of the toughest interviews I did last year. Like, you kicked my ass on this too, and I really appreciated that, because if I was going to get heat from anyone, I'm glad it came from somebody who has my best interest at their heart, as opposed to some MSNBC Google. But this year, like, when we were redoing our website, the number one thing I told Kynan, our policy director, was like, we need more policy. We need more policy. I don't care. We need more policy. Just put it up. Like, we have good beliefs. Let's write it down. So the short-term thing is, you have an education crisis. One thing that I've been telling people is we need to deploy our teachers like we deploy our soldiers. You know, the Bronx is the worst in education right now. And if we do not save this current generation of students, we have no future whatsoever, because these are the people that have to take over once the old generation is gone. So how do we make sure that they that they have an actual good, viable education? We need to do an emergency reconstruction program of the entire Bronx, top down, and we need to do that day one. That means we have to take the students in the worst performing high schools and we have to put them in special programs, specialized programs, where we're going to say, you need a good education and you need one now. So we're going to bring in tons of teachers, tons of resources. We're going to work with the families and figure out what it is they need in order to make sure that their students can have an environment in which they can actually learn and live in. And we have to make sure that they have an alternative so that they can get taken care of and they can get the education they need so that they can be literate. We have too many illiterate people walking around in the Bronx graduating high school. Now, from there, you have to re-inspect every single public housing that is over 30 years old. That's one of the reasons why the facades are falling apart in the Bronx right now. We need to treat this like a state of the Bronx is in a state of emergency right now that's just been undeclared. So we have to bring in engineers. Like, we have to bring in the Army Corps of Engineers to look up and down every single inch of all the public housing before the next one blows up, falls apart, or, you know, is for whatever godforsaken reason gets flooded. We have to make sure that they're good. And if they need to be repaired, if they need to be, you know, if portions of it need to just come down and come right back up, we got to make sure that there's viable housing so that we can relocate people temporarily while we fix the public housing. We need to build up new public housing, and we need to get rid of the red tape. We have an inner borough train line that's about to be built from the Bronx to Queens to Brooklyn, and that was announced 3 years ago. They're just now about to hire an engineer that's going to take 15 years to build a train line, 15 years to build something that was conceptualized in the 80s. And the rail lines are already there. It's not like they're breaking ground. The rails are already there. So they are trying to purposely kill the people here. We need to do an emergency program to stop that. And I will raise hell in the Congress and I will say, listen, okay, like Ritchie Torres came out with a statement saying it's going to cost $80 billion to fix New York City housing. $80 billion. Great. Let's take the $75 billion we give to all of our intelligence agencies, okay, and reduce their budget to $1. And let's take the last $5 billion from Israel and let's bring it back to New York City. Let's start with that as our short-term domestic policy. That's how we're going to fix the Bronx in the first 3 to 5 years. That's just my short-term policy. My long-term policy, go ahead.
Well, let me add really quick. What Jose just said there about the building inspections, that's supposed to happen anyway, but it doesn't.
Exactly.
Same thing here, similar in Boston. It's supposed to be done, but it's not, and the buildings fall apart. Go ahead, Jose. Sorry.
No. You're absolutely right. And I'm sorry, I just get so heated because it's like, if you had a government that actually cared about its people, I wouldn't be running for Congress. I would live out my wild dreams of making movies or art or something. But I'm doing this because nobody is standing up with a reasonable approach. If you genuinely believe there's an emergency in the country or in your district, you have to treat it like such. You know, the way we deploy soldiers to the Middle East, for whatever goddamn reason, we should be deploying our people, our resources in our own cities. We should be treating our cities and rescuing them from the grips of authoritarianism instead of going to a foreign country and doing it for them and instead instilling fascism in them, okay? We would need to actually come into the streets of of the Bronx with the resources for people to get them out of poverty, because this is an emergency crisis right now. Food pantry shutting down, schools shutting down, hospitals shutting down, but luxury housing being built up and casinos being built up. No. Something is wrong. Something is rotten in our state government, our local government, and our federal government. And it all needs to be cleaned up right now. And I hope that anybody who decides to work on this campaign or contributes to this campaign has that as their conception of what we are doing here. We are overthrowing the entire chessboard. I'm not cozying up. If I were to win the primary, believe me, you will not see me calling Nancy Pelosi Mama Bear. You will not see me vying for Hakeem Jeffries and voting him in for Speaker of the House. They are all utter failures and disgraces. And I am saying that now early because I want people to know where I stand on this. Okay. I hate the people that compose the Democratic Party. And maybe I shouldn't say hate. I've been working a lot with Father Harry Berry, who's a 96-year-old peace activist, and he says I shouldn't say that. So you know what? I'm sorry. I got too emotional. Oh, sorrow. Anyway, I just that's my short-term policy.
Jose, I have to say, and I want to show everybody your website here really quick. It's Jose Vega for Congress, votevega.nyc. And I just have to say, first of all, check out Jose's website. It says declare your independence. Ready to transform the Bronx. Sign up to volunteer and help us build a movement for Medicare for all, reindustrialization, and peace through development. And I just have to make a statement, an observation I've noticed. I think you have come miles from where you were when you ran last time. I really do. I think that I think you have a shot. I really do. A lot of people are very upset with our money going to Israel, very upset with AIPAC, and also just upset with Ritchie Torres, right? Like, I think people have had enough of him. And I have to say, I'm just being honest, I've seen a tremendous improvement from where you were last time. And I know last time, it was your first time and you kind of learn things, as you go. But one of the things I appreciate about you is that you weren't just this person that's like, I just want to be a politician. I appreciate the fact that you do organize. You do mutual aid. You do help people. And I think that at the end of the day, it's what's really going to matter. Like, people remember those who do for the community and those who just come by every now and then, and they already got your vote and you see them every now and then. So I think that I have to tell you, I'm impressed. I really am. And I mean that sincerely. So wow. I wish you all of the luck, Jose. One more question I do want to ask you is, who do you think, if you had to narrow down where Ritchie Torres is getting his support, what area of the Bronx do you think that is coming from?
Oh, great question. In the area of the Bronx, it's Riverdale. So there's a big, and it was gerrymandered this way, but Riverdale of the Bronx is seen as one of the wealthiest areas, not just of New York City, but of the country. And it's one of the richest, wealthiest zip codes. And it only composes like 10% of the district, yet they're the people that show up and vote. Like 50,000 of the 110,000 people that voted in the midterms come from that one district. And that's largely from that section of the district. And that's largely a pro-Zionist district. And that area of the Bronx was given to Ritchie Torres when he won his congressional race in 2020 as a way to try and anchor him in. Meaning that our job is to go into the places that have been forgotten, that don't come out and vote, because they do outnumber them. The people in the South Bronx, the people who are poorest, outnumber the wealthy people who do vote. And don't get me wrong, I talk to people all the time in the South Bronx who are like, I don't vote because nothing changes. Nothing changes. You are all the same. I've gotten heckled at the housing project at Mitchell Projects because there was, and like I come there with a button-up shirt, a clean haircut, and I was doing my video about this is a disgrace. And she started, there's this one tenant, she lost her home, and she just starts yelling at me saying, you politicians, you come here, you make decisions that only make our lives worse, and then you come here and pretend you care about us. And I tried to talk to her, but she was in an emotional state because she wasn't allowed in her home. It might have been destroyed, and she only saw me as a politician. And I thought, wow, like people have lost their trust, and understandably so, because politicians are the reason why that house is falling, why she lost everything.
Yep.
It's a big major challenge that we have to have. And I think if, as long as we continue with love and perseverance, and honestly, all the credit to my team. I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be the person I am without every single one of them. And they know who they are. And, you know, they all deserve the world. And Sabby, I just want to say thank you for your kind words. You know, it was like walking through a ring of fire last year. I mean, I was homeless. I was sleeping in my car and I didn't really know what I was doing. And, you know, I mean, life is a little bit better now. But as my friend says, when you walk through fire, you come out as baked bread, you know? So I think that's very true.
I'm sorry, Jose. We got one more we got two more for you. This one here, it says, given the history, thank you, Kevin. Given the history of this binary lobbyist system, are you in favor of dismantling this vicious capitalist system? That's one. Dismantling capitalism. And the other one, thank you, Roger. Will you sponsor a bill to remove housing from the predatory, speculative market to reverse the homelessness crisis?
Yes, and yes. Actually, Roger, that is very good language to use in a policy paper. And I'm hoping that Kynan is watching so he can take that and expand and elaborate on that. But yes, in terms of dismantling capitalism, absolutely. I think we have capitalism on drugs right now. I mean, it's just completely insane. And I would like to introduce Matthew Carey to a lot of you who may not know. You know, this was an early American economist who was talking about the wealth disparity in the United States in the early 1800s that I've been drawing a lot of my parallels to. Oh, and also Henry Carey as well, and the American system of economics. I know that a lot of people here are socialists, and I think that you should read the debates between Henry Carey and Karl Marx, because Karl Marx called Henry Carey the only American economist worth reading, and I was talking to Christian Parenti about this a lot. But basically, this idea of wealth disparity and how you tackle it, I think, was something that was at the heart of many of the people in the mid-1800s, especially Matthew Carey, and of course, Karl Marx too. And I do think we do need to dismantle the predatory capitalist system that continues to oppress the masses here in the United States. And it does actually include what Roger said about removing housing from the predatory speculative market, which is just another example of capitalism gone wrong. So, yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. I think we have one. I'm so sorry, Jose.
No, don't apologize. This is great. I love talking to people.
Sniper, thank you. Do you support Zoran's plan of reducing the mayor's control over education system, giving Department of Education and school boards more power?
Yeah, I think I do. I actually was just discussing this because first of all, he has this thing about wanting to get rid of the gifted and talented program for kindergartners, but keeping it for the third graders. But the problem with that is that like the Board of Education right now, especially in the federal level, is run by Linda McMahon, who wants to dismantle it. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, because I do think that the Board of Education should be in charge of the education of a city or of a state or even of the country as a whole. But the problem is you have a hostile federal government towards nationalizing education policy that I don't know if I would be comfortable with that, because I don't know if I would trust. First of all, I don't know if I trust Zoran, period. But I don't know if let's say Zoran has good intentions. At this moment in time, do I trust the education in his hands over Linda McMahon's? I would say the answer might be yes, given what he said. But in principle, I would support it over for education to be handed more power towards the Board of Education and the Department of Education. I do think you need a proper national curriculum that just has not worked or functioned for a very long time now. And I think you need one that's based on classical education principles. I mean, how do you actually educate a child? And I genuinely believe that every child is truly capable of genius. I don't believe in discriminating children. And I think that everybody is capable of understanding, learning, reading, and is capable of making real discoveries. And our education system right now does not meet those standards of making sure that every child has, to their best ability, or given the tools to their best ability to develop their most creative potential. And
Yeah.
as a congressman, I would work towards fixing that.
I was going to say there are different categories of intelligence people too. There's different types of intelligence. It's not just academic. Like a lot of people hear intelligence and they're like, oh, you must be really smart with math or something. Like there's musical intelligence. There's all different types of intelligence. And I think we need to start looking at things that way instead of the score that someone got on their SATs. You know what I mean?
I dropped out of college, so did Ritchie Torres, but I dropped out of college, and I don't think that somebody's credentials defines them as intelligent. I've met a lot of Harvard educated people that are, maybe, don't, anyway, you know where I'm going with that. And I don't need to finish that.
Yeah. Yeah. Some people have book smarts, but not common sense. And last one, I promise. Thank you, Roger. Will you co-sponsor Chicago Congressman Danny Day Davis National Infrastructure Public Bank? Would you sponsor a bill to reinstate postal banking?
On Danny Davis's National Infrastructure Public Bank, yes, absolutely. I think that's already up on my site as a policy for a institution of a national infrastructure bank, because we're going to need to figure out how do we produce the billions of dollars to make high-speed rail. Because that's another thing I want to bring to the country. I want to be able to get from here to Boston in an hour, or from here to DC in less than an hour through high-speed rail. The money's got to come from somewhere. Now, yes, we can redistribute it. Absolutely. Our $1 trillion defense budget spending bill is way too high. But also, I do believe in printing out or instituting credit to fund these big public projects, and you don't seek an immediate return on investment. A national bank is not supposed to get a return on investment. At best, you can charge maybe 2% interest over the course of 20 years. It'll make its money back, and the society will be better as a whole. So yes, I do support that. As for postal banking, I looked into it, Roger, and honestly, I'm not against it. I think it's a good idea. So yeah, sign me up for that.
I think the first person I heard bring that up was Andrew Yang when he was running for president in 2020 about the postal banking. And I found that pretty interesting. And then I have just last two for myself here. If there were legislation that was brought forward, if you win and you do head to DC, if there was legislation that was presented for BDS, would you support that? And if there was legislation that was presented for reparations for descendants of American slavery, would you support that?
Yes and yes. Okay. I know we had a back and forth last year about reparations and what that would look like. But honestly, if a bill came to my desk and if I had to vote on it, for reparations, like, yes. How much money have we given to Israel, and how many? And the one of the things that you had told me was that we had given reparations to other groups of people, which I think is like, well, if we gave it to other groups of people, why don't we just give it to the people who are here? So yeah, absolutely. I would absolutely push for it, and I would vote for it. So, you can consider that something that you've won me over on that, but I wouldn't stop there. I would say that reparations has to also be giving people the tools in which that they can continue to develop themselves forward. So that means another form of reparations that has to be done is rebuilding neighborhoods. That has to be, we've destroyed many neighborhoods in the United States through redlining and through like the Bronx. We cut the Bronx in half through the Cross Bronx Expressway because of racism. So that's just what it was. Robert Moses said, fuck the Bronx. I'm going to put a giant highway in the middle, split it, and have a lot of trucks in here, right? So, of course, what's the reparations for that? Well, for one, I think you're going to have to redo all of that, and you're going to have to put it either underground or you're going to have to develop other means of transportation. Secondly, I think, sorry, what was the first question? Oh, BDS. Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We're going to BDS. We're going to boycott, divest from Israel. 100%. So that's absolutely. Yes, I do support, both of those. So.
All right, Jose, I'm impressed. I see tremendous improvement from last time. And I just want to wish you good luck and knock him out of there. Knock Ritchie out of there.
Thank you. Thank you, Sabrina. Thank you for having me on your platform, and just thank you. And thank you. Honestly, thank you.
All right. Bye, Jose.
Thank you. Take care.
Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.